Hampshire in Wickham. It's in Norrington House.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they had a division there. They didn't seem to see the point. What time did you make it up?
There you go.
Oh, that's all right. Then my watch is on.
Alton, calling a Rockley, Medicine, 4 marks and Alton.
Hello, Steve. Welcome to Alresford.
Well, nice to be here.
Weather's not too good, but
No, I think we can, we'll enjoy a walk round.
yeah.
So, thank you for showing me.
Alresford Railway Station, the western terminus of the renowned Watercress line. The line was closed by British Rail on the 4th of February 1973, after over 100 years of service, but was reopened again 5 years later as the Winchester and Alton Railway, and is now one of the finest preserved railways in Britain. With many beautifully restored engines, it runs from Alton, 10 miles to the east, via 4 marks and Rockley. And what better way could there possibly be for me to complete my journey to this lovely old market town, lying as it does at the very centre of the county of Hampshire, amid some of the finest countryside in southern England. I have come to Alresford to meet my old friend and local historian John Adams, to see the town as it is today and to find out more about its past. We shall in fact be looking at 2 Alresfords. The busy main town of New Alresford, situated on the A31, midway between Alton and Winchester, and, to the north, separated by a great dam, the smaller, close-knit community of Old Alresford. Both have a long and checkered history that for us will begin over 1300 years ago. I shall be joining John again later, after I've had a look around the town, but first let's look at its early history. On the gently rising chalk slopes of the south bank of the Itchen River, at a height of 220 feet, lies the town of New Alresford. begin our story, we must first take you to the nearby city of Winchester, for it was here in the year 1189 that a certain Godfrey de Lucy was enthroned as the bishop. 10 years later he founded the town of Novum Forum. Now Novum Forum, or New Market, became known as New Alresford about 100 years later in 1285, and from that time on the name of de Lucy has always been associated with Alresford. Godfrey de Lucy had decided that Alresford would be an ideal spot to develop a centre for the trading of wool, the surrounding downland being excellent for the rearing of sheep. So a dam was built, now known as the Great Weir, which was to control the water flow from the two streams. This held back the water flow to form Alresford Pond. The pond was originally 200 acres in size and was stocked in the year 1253 with roach, perch, bream and pike, a valuable source of fresh food in the days before refrigerators. It is clear from the air that the pond is now badly silted up, and is now only about a quarter of its original size. By tracing its boundary we can see that it ran from the Great Weir eastwards to Bishop Sutton, where the bishop had a palace. The pond provided a source of energy to drive corn mills and for the process of fulling cloth. The reeds that now cover much of the pond were frequently used in the days when many of the dwellings in Alresford were thatched. But since thatching has ceased, they are no longer cut and continue to invade the pond. The dam to the west of the road, 20 feet high and 400 feet long, and carries a road along its top. It's thought to be the biggest medieval construction in Britain, still serving its original purpose as both road and dam. more about the dam later. First, let's take a more general look at the layout of New Alresford town itself. From the year 1225 until 1850, the Liberty of Alresford, as it was called, comprised of 3 parishes of Old Alresford, New Alresford and Medstead, stretching 9 miles from east to west. This liberty had been given to the church at the nearby town of Winchester by Cernywalla, the king of the West Saxons, in around 639 AD. It is believed at that time that Alresford itself consisted of 40 farms, 2 churches and a group of dwellings for its rather poor inhabitants, which were in fact 2 settlements, separated by little more than swampland. This was fed by 2 streams, rising from springs at Bishop Sutton to the east and Byton to the northeast. In William the Conqueror's survey, the Domesday Book, compiled between 1081 and 1086, the village was described as being in the Fawley Hundred and having 51 hides of land. A hide corresponded to roughly 120 acres. The liberty comprised of 2 main tenancies, divided between the Bishop of Winchester and an Englishman, and the Domesday Book quotes the bishop as having 48 villeins or villagers, 36 smallholders and 31 slaves. The origin of the name Alresford is believed to be derived from the Saxon language meaning where the alders grow, so it's very likely that long ago there were alders growing near a ford at this spot. At the centre of the town stands the town hall, now a community centre. It's a rather plain building, built in 1865. Behind the town hall stands the church of John the Baptist. There was originally a Saxon church on this site, but like so many buildings in Alresford, it was burnt to the ground, but fragments from it do still survive. A Norman church followed the Saxon building, but it probably had a thatched roof, and it's thought that it too was destroyed, this time in a serious fire in 1160, which swept through the whole town. During the Reformation, Henry's commissioners wantonly vandalised the church, and the town's trade was badly affected. However, Alresford remained prosperous until the disastrous fire of 1689, which completely destroyed the town, including most of the church. During the reign of George II, Britain was at war with France, and by 1757 over 300 French prisoners were held on parole, often living in cellars of local residents. There are many stories about the French prisoners billeted in Alresford at the time, and it is said that they gave the church its clock in 1811. This line of gravestones near the west door marks the grave of 5 of Napoleon's men, 4 soldiers and a sailor. As the church stands now, the oldest part is the tower, and part of this is from Norman times. Set in the tower above the west entrance is a tiny stone crucifix or rood. It's of Saxon origin and is more than 700 years old. Apart from this, the church is of the late 19th century, built to a design by Sir Arthur Blomfield. The town that de Lucy laid out is more or less as we see it today, built in the shape of a T, East Street, West Street and Broad Street, and there is clear evidence of the boundaries of the medieval burgage plots on either side of Broad Street. In the early 13th century, 40 burgesses settled in the town, and it seems they each occupied a plot of around 350 feet in length. At the southernmost edge of the town, adjacent to the bypass and the golf course, stands the Cricketers Inn. The original Cricketers was at the other end of this road. Once a laundry, it's now a private residence. Nearby is the old Union Workhouse, now converted into smart apartments. In 1707 it fell victim to a serious fire, and during this the master and matron were so busy rescuing the inmates that they lost all their own possessions. Sun Lane, once called Bramdean Way, and Drove Lane to the northwest were used to drive sheep into the town in the years when sheep fairs and markets were held. In the 14th century, Alresford was one of the most prosperous wool centres in England, and large sheep fairs were held in the marketplace. But the fairs were moved in 1820s to this meadow in Sun Lane, called Fairfield, and in 1837 a record 40,000 sheep were penned there. The last sheep fair held in Alresford was in this field called Sheeplands in the early 1970s. In fact, Hurdle House was the site where sheep hurdles were stored and repaired. Here on the corner of Sun Lane and East Street is what was once a popular drovers pub called the Sun, now a fine private house. It is where the famous cricket commentator John Arlott lived for many years. Close neighbours to the Sun are the Alresford Bowling Club and the late 18th century Langton House. Opposite Sun Lane, at the beginning of East Street, is Cardew, once a hotel and built on the site of the old manor house. East Street was once called Ram Alley, and this row of early 19th century working class cottages stand back from the road, separated by a wide grass verge. Brandymount is an attractive little lane leading off East Street to the south. Folklore tells us that there used to be a complicated network of cellars and passages linking Brandymount with Broad Street and East and West Streets, through which clandestine exchanges of goods were said to have taken place. Historical fact? Well, who knows? Ah, it looks like they're redecorating the peaceful home. Now this is another of the old East Street hostelries. This is number 22, built by Robert Waite in 1827. For building this room over the gateway, he had to pay an extra 6p a year in rates.
Over the arch, forming the arch.
Yeah, the piece of this sort of new
There.
car hang on, yes.
That belonged to the house next door, and there was a cabinet maker living in this house,
Yes.
and the cabinet maker bought that house for 10 guineas in 1821, I think it was. He didn't do badly.
I suppose there was a lot of wells. You must have had a well in the garden at some stage.
Yes, they were all fed by wells. I'll put some down.
Oh, right.
Now, one or two of them have got the Queen's face on it. So there, you see, those were strung apparently all along the street. I've got about 200 up here. Let's see if I can find them. They were red, white, and blue.
Yes. And a candle went in there, did it?
Yes. Red, white, and blue, and occasionally one with the Queen's head in it. Oh, here we are. Here's the Queen. You're all a very splendid one.
Oh, look at that, yes. That really is a... And they're a little bit heavier.
Isn't that good?
With the Queen Victoria's
Yeah, that's really
head on there. That is something, isn't it? And the candle inside. Or a candle.
Yeah.
It's amazing what there is tucked away in people's lofts. Lovely views through our alleyways and archways. Ah, the Swan. Now I wonder if they're open. Well, here we are now, way down below the Swan Hotel, in one of the many cellars and tunnels that are to be found beneath houses in Alresford. And this, like many of the others, was used to house French prisoners of war.
Mind you, don't fall over on this road, on these cobbled roads.
Like that, they're like that. When you
mean, it lasts.
All done with very crude tools.
Yeah.
But no, it's interesting you didn't find any fire damage because so many of the places in Alresford, as you probably know, were burnt down.
No fire.
Thatch
Well,
roofs.
no fire damage whatsoever. If it hadn't been for that storm, it's
Get
hollow.
back to a good big old.
Yeah. And you possibly see where the cupboards were. It's so much lovely. You can see where the old wainscoting. If you look up here, you can see where the old wainscoting used to come.
Oh, I
Where it
see.
together.
Yes.
See, it's different. And we can't get rid of that. We tried. Where the old cupboards were, which I presume were cupboards of
Yeah, the line up through there.
line up, and it goes all the way along there. Yeah. And behind the bar.
So your cellars all the way under here?
Right through.
Right the way through.
Right
yeah.
through.
And under the what was the roadway through, or does it go beyond that? Does yeah.
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 Do you want to have a look there?
I'd love to have a look.
Have a look.
Yes.
Have a look. Let's have a... I think... Oh, not on. Yeah, come have a look. This was all bar here. This was all bar.
I see, right the way through.
Right the way through. And all this is only...
I see.
That's only the sheet
So
of...
in order to get new access to the cellar, they would have to have put up a separate...
They took all this space away from the bar.
Let's have a look down, shall we?
Yeah. If I shout, man, then we push this light back on. It's on a time switch of 7 minutes.
Oh, so we've got 7 minutes.
So you basically go down.
Yeah. Oh, I just look at this lovely old, I mean, I say lovely old, I mean it looks as though
It
it's about
is,
to fall down, but it's,
Well, it's...
I always think there's a reason for a wall.
That goes in like that.
Yeah.
So I've tried to think, and probably sometime, you know,
Some barrel
came
stored here,
down, well,
or
came down, or a lantern. A lantern,
something, yeah.
you know, naturally built in, or...
certainly been
But,
a reason for it. God, look at this right through here. To the
Now, this is-
stable yard that goes through. over.
This is the old entrance to the cellar, which came down. So somebody told me when I first came here, like all these places have the legend of the
Prisoners of War?
No,
haven't got that one.
No, not prisoners of war, but the entrance through to the churchyard.
Ah,
To the church.
Yes,
Everyone seems to have this.
Yeah.
Let's go to the
That's
church.
right,
To the bottom of the from the
yeah.
pub.
Also for the vicars who make a quick getaway. Because the vicars weren't in the days with the tithes and all this sort of thing.
That's
you know,
right.
when they,
Yeah.
usually the people had no time for them. So sometimes the mob would come out and molest him, and he'd make a quick retreat.
Also, I believe under here is an old well.
Ah,
Somebody tells me that down here, at some stage, you can hear it's hollow.
it is, most certainly. Yeah.
Somebody tells me at one stage that down here was an old well. And I'm
what
always frightened about throwing barrels of beer around here, just in case I'll suddenly disappear 50 feet
I can
below.
understand why. And I suppose we're what, above the streams 80, 90 feet?
I would imagine so.
I would think so, which is an average well depth.
Yeah. One here and one out in the yard. So
Yeah.
one out, there used to be an old well in the yard
Yes.
years ago.
You know, because this is all built originally, so
They must have had a
access
purpose.
through, access through,
Yeah.
something, yeah. Could have been into the access to the
Yeah.
to the stabling block.
Could have been.
Yeah.
But it's a natural drain away down here, and it gets very damp in that corner.
Yeah.
When you do the barrels,
I wonder if it goes down into the well anyway. They use this as a segue to what could have been the old well.
it could be. I
Yeah.
had my hand down when I first came down there. I had my hand down there, and it's sludge. It's not very pleasant, I can assure you.
No.
Over the saloon bar fireplace, Corky has set into the wall this brick, commemorating Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. It's one of many discovered in a wall during demolition work at Hankins' garage. Now in this room, above the bar, it's where the farmers used to meet on market days. Now I wonder what they would have seen from this window in the days before cars and motorbikes and all the traffic noise. Ah well, back to the hustle and bustle of West Street. Chance to look at some of the produce on sale. Oh, lovely flowers.
Rory, come on.
And my favourites, carnations. Much of the architecture in West Street has been influenced by William Henry Hunt, who built this house in 1868. Hunt was a former burgess of Alresford. He was also a fine architect, and much loved working with brick.
Hello, Steve. How are you? Don't know if you can do anything with this whole thing. Okay. So what's its problem? Well, it doesn't seem to work. Well, it might just simply do better. The tombstone, really. But
the sundial is a tombstone.
yes, that's right. Yeah, it doesn't raise it.
Right, yeah.
More of William Henry Hunt's influence can be seen on this fine red brick building, with its prominent dental courses. And it's worth a look up because some of the roofs have fine detail too. And why not investigate some of the alleyways and byways? Like the rest of Alresford, much has changed in West Street. This building, for example, used to be the White Hart. They had its name changed in 1859 to the Volunteer Arms. On the corner of the Dean and West Street stands the old schoolhouse restaurant. This house was originally built to house the headmaster of a new school built for Henry Perrin, who died in 1697, to educate 19 poor men's sons in the Latin tongue, writing, accounts, etc. The adjoining schoolroom, which has now been converted into 2 shops, still has its dormer window in the roof. Every scholar was to pay 1 shilling a year towards the provisions of rods and brooms to be used in the school. For many years this was a hostel for girls attending the Perrin School on Pound Hill. Perrin School moved from the corner of the Dean and West Street to its present site here on Pound Hill in 1932. A portrait of Henry hangs in the school gymnasium. The Dean, leading away from West Street, has been greatly developed in post-war years, and alas, many of the old cottages which once stood here have been demolished. A small modern industrial area now is established on both sides of the Dean. The old Dean School, built around 1834, has gone, and only its trees remain, which used to be in the playground. The Dean Arms once stood here, a public house built to quench the thirst of the workers from the nearby gasworks, which, like the pub, are now part of history. The Dean is a quieter part of the town, giving one a chance to chat to local inhabitants, like Bill here, who explained that this building across the way used to be a small farmhouse, and I wonder how many would notice the date set in brick. 1772. Well, I think it's time I took Bill up on his kind offer of a nice cup of tea.
Now this area used to be a turkey farm. The gardens, this plot of land that the houses were built on.
One. Do you have sugar, Bill?
Yes, please.
Where was the gasworks? That's what I want to know.
It was about 100 yards up on the right, as far as I can gather.
Because that pub...
They had a bomb here during the war.
Oh.
Bomb or two, I think they...
I just wanted the gas work.
Good then.
But it was only one of those small gasometers, as far as I can understand, about 25 feet diameter and about 25 feet high.
Because the workers from that used that pub, didn't they?
Yes, they probably would
That
have.
pub, yeah. Shifty.
Good God, that's a bit weak, isn't it?
Well, when it came out, I can't alter that.
I'm not very strong.
I don't like that.
It's hot.
Yeah, I like strong tea. No, this is
Perhaps I should have
Bill, you're a saint.
stirred it round a bit.
You're very welcome.
Oh.
The road ends at the bottom of the Dean, just beyond this row of cottages, where the River Arle flows gently away from the town. Perhaps this is where the original ford was that gave its name to Alresford. It is clear from this old town plan that Broad Street is the widest of the three main streets and has been used for centuries as the marketplace. At the bottom of Broad Street the road forks, right to the Soak and left to the lane leading to the town and weir mills. Still shown on this plan are what remained of the shambles, where in old wooden huts cattle and sheep were slaughtered and butchered, the blood running down the channels in the centre of the street. By the year 1790, New Alresford was quite a busy coaching town, with several companies operating between London and Southampton. It's often said that Broad Street was built so wide as to allow a coach and four to turn around in one smooth operation. The mail coaches pass through from London daily between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning on its way to Southampton. The fare from Alresford to London was 15 shillings, and to Southampton 5 shillings. Today Broad Street gives the shopper plenty of off-street parking on both sides of the road.
Alresford, I mean, it's just...
Oh, are you?
Yeah, well,
it's part of the local scene, yeah.
Just raking. I mean, we just finished with 3 months we've been at it.
Oh, have you?
And
Yeah.
lovely old Austin 7 one Oh, he's on the way from Highgate to Devon to do a hill climb. And Brighton there was a mock road. But I will try that one. I think they've got things to do. I used to live in London. I travelled with 4 years before, and I used to see it like on the pond on the way. And I love to up on some of the old hills, which was going.
Well, I used to,
What was this when you first came, Lawrence? This was a dairy, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Water.
Yes. What, actually running?
Yes, yes. They had all the bottling and everything went on. We had we had 5 wells down the back there.
Wells?
Wells for the water in it. But they had 2 quite a lot of modern things there. They did have 1 tap.
Yes.
And they had a bog place down the back there still. But they did have, while I don't think could have had it very long, sort of there was a loo there.
Yeah.
But this was all very primitive around here.
Can you remember the name of the dairy?
The what people here were deadmen then. There are umpteen deadmans around here.
Deadman.
Dead man.
Dead man. Yeah.
Deadman. Well, we bought the place from. Did you know there used to be a cycle shop on the corner there?
Yes. Yes.
Well, this was
yes.
the Deadman's.
Yes. You had the cycle shop.
He had.
Yeah. George.
Yeah.
George. You might be able to help us on this.
What did you want to know?
Lawrence was just saying that this used to be a dairy.
Dairy, yeah, Deadman's.
Yeah, Deadman. Yeah. You had the cycle shop.
That's right.
Yeah, and he said that there were 5 wells down the
That's
back
right,
there.
yeah. Yeah, all the dairy was at the back of the old sheds, they've all gone there.
Because I was just saying to Lawrence, I first came in here in 1953 in this shop.
Yeah, before then
he came in 1950.
Yeah.
So I don't remember it as a dairy. No.
They moved to
Yes, it was Deadman's were only the tenants.
That's right, and then way back it was a paint shop of some sort.
Yeah,
Because you remember the beams above the old workshop?
Right,
They were about that thick in paint, but they'd wiped the brushes out over the years. And
no charge.
you could
You
could break it off, and there was all the colours.
Yeah. The chap I used to come in here to something to talk to him, and I'd browse through the junk and as he was saying, it wouldn't be jumping out, would it? Yeah, that's right.
But all this has been changed and altered now. So they're showing the beautiful bed.
Oh yeah, good view from there.
That's beautiful.
But do you want the key to get up there, or can you just get the top of the
No, we don't need the steps.
And the old rocking horse there.
Yeah.
What is around here, George?
Come and see this one. It's an old privy here, look.
Good heavens.
So look in there.
Yeah. A 2-seater, George.
That's right.
A 2-seater. Good heavens. Not many of these left.
I don't think there's many left in Alresford now, no. I think the buildings, the original buildings are still there, but they're no longer used for,
No.
no longer got the insides of it.
Good gracious.
Can I help you?
Well, apparently there's an old bakery around here somewhere.
Oh, this is it.
This is the old
This
bakery.
is the old bakery.
Yeah.
And that's the oven over there.
Good gracious.
And that's where it used to be.
In the wall here. Oh, thank you very much.
And we just asked if we would burn that was here before. Lovely.
So, thank you very much for your help.
That's
It's been
all right.
marvellous. Thank you.
Is that all right?
Number 27, Mitford House, is an elegant 18th century building. A plaque on the wall commemorates the birth in 1787 of Mary Russell Mitford. Mary wrote the classic Our Village, but the village she described was 3 Mile Cross near Reading, not about Alresford. Many fine and interesting buildings can be seen at the lower end of Broad Street. Here, on the roof corners of this fine Georgian house, are 2 finials in the shape of pineapples. Crossing the street, we find the old fire station built in 1881. Another of William Henry Hunt's designs. The site was donated to the bailiff and burgesses in that year for the purpose of erecting a fire station and was built at a cost of £130 and stands today as a permanent memorial to the centuries-old rule of the bailiff and burgesses of Alresford.
The base of the church tower.
But which church are you talking about? This one?
Yeah, New
Alresford Church.
Yeah.
Yes. Horse-drawn and manual fire pump kept at the Swan Hotel.
That's right.
Purchased by public subscription for £135, and that was quite a lot of money, 1858, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yes.
So they added an escape to that, you see.
Yeah.
When this place was built in 1881, you see.
Yes, and for how long was this a fire station?
Well, right up till 1940.
Up to the war?
Yeah.
Second World War?
Sure.
And then what happened?
Well, then they moved the appliances from here to the new fire station.
Yeah.
And this place became all sorts of funny things.
Yes. Yeah. Now they no doubt chuck a bit of water over.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. The original fire service, as such, didn't exist. You know,
no.
It wasn't a fire service. But I mean, when the court went up, there was a fire. Everybody was ran to either the church tower or the Swan or the engine house here.
Yes.
This place.
Yeah.
And heaved the pumps out. And then they got a recognised fire brigade in the town, which was Alresford Fire Brigade. And this was coming in about here somewhere when they had this Merryweather proper steam Merryweather pump purchased again by public subscription, so £350.
So it wasn't paid for out of taxes?
No, it was raised by public subscription. The list still exists. Everybody who paid custom built fire engine.
That was a custom built fire engine.
She was a six-wheeler. Pretty useless machine from all accounts.
Yes. Does the old steam one exist still?
Not this one doesn't exist, no, but there's one very similar in the fire station in Alresford, which is Titchbourne Park Fire Brigade, and it's identical. It's a Merryweather of the same period.
Same thing, yeah.
And then the fire station yeah.
What else would there have been? The uniforms? Would there have been some sort of uniform?
Oh yeah, they had a uniform, yeah.
And presumably other equipment like axes.
Oh yeah, they had proper, they had the brass helmets and the button-up jacket and the belt with the axe and the black trousers with the leather boots.
And was it? Were they summoned by bell?
They were summoned by maroon originally, which is a rocket.
Was it?
That was fired from the police station.
Yeah.
They fired the rocket off. There was a hell of a bang, and the story was that one bang was in the town, two bangs are outside the town.
Yeah.
So they fired one rocket for the town and two rockets outside the town.
Yes, but they presumably. Now, how would the message have got here, where the fire was?
Well, they wouldn't have come here. They went to the police station because that's where the rockets were.
Yeah, so the police station would know where the fire was because before the days of telephone.
That's right. Well, if you had a fire, you ran to the police station and said, "I've got a fire," and they said, "Where is it?" And they fired the rocket off. Then one of the policemen would come down here and presumably tell the fireman where to go.
Yeah, and hopefully by the time you got there, the place.
Well, you see, in 1908, they had to go, having fired the rockets off.
They go get the horses.
The bloke who was driving the horses, which was a chap called Young, they supplied the horses. They were hauliers in the area.
Yes.
He had to stop his cart, unhitch the horses from the cart, gallop the horses to the station, and back them onto the pump, and then take the pump to the fire.
Good.
So any serious fire in the town.
Very few thatched buildings are left in Alresford, and serious fires are, thankfully, few and far between. This house became the headquarters of the American troops stationed here during the Second World War. They adopted a local dog called Hambone, who is now buried beside one of his favourite walks.
Morning. Half a bit, please. Not very busy?
Nah, it's been quiet this morning. That's 75 in pence.
Ah, lovely. Hello, Rick. How you doing? That's a nice whole thing, isn't it? Yeah. How long have you been? You reckon? Yeah. What's the date from? 1937, is it? Based on 37 route. Yeah. You go well? Yeah, well done. Cool. Thanks very much.
You'll have to get in sort of easy.
Yeah. Right.
Stick your legs down first.
I see, I can see your point now, yeah. Otherwise it's,
The Church of St Mary the Virgin, dating back to the early 9th century, was rebuilt during the 18th century on the site of a Saxon church. The main part of the church in 1753 and the tower in 1769. This was the mother church of the Liberty of Alresford, when New Alresford and Medstead churches were but chapelries. The vicar of Old Alresford very kindly invited me to climb the tower, pausing on the way up in the belfry to admire the bells. From the top of the tower there were lovely views of Old Alresford and the surrounding countryside.
They're anchoring the whole wall by the weight, by the sheer weight.
Oh, I see.
Pushing down onto the bricks, consolidating it, giving it some stress.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah.
Like a buttress doesn't stress sideways.
Yes.
That's a sort of a buttress downwards.
And this is all laid to create a gutter, so that at one point, probably here, the water will shed down into the well of the tower, so that the water's not going to run. You see, these are even cut on a slight angle, running back inwards.
It'll all run, and it'll run up there. You see, it's got a. No, they're binding.
Yeah.
They're bonds, aren't they?
Yeah. There's iron in some, and that's copper rod.
And that's there.
Yeah, so why those chisel marks are there? Whether that was to finally hammer it down, to link the stones together, because
yes, to give them added strength.
The copper rod in there. There's a lump of iron in this one.
The whole church, the whole tower was built, so we're told, for £100 from bricks from over the way.
Good.
Slightly higher than they say there is now.
Yes.
How many is it now?
Well, it's around about 450, and it was then about 470. That sort of.
And what's happened, of course, is these houses that house the large, poorer families, the houses have been vacated, done up, and now there may be one or two people.
One house instead of three.
Yes.
But the only exception to that, of course, is the rest house. Rest home now is rather a concentration of people. They've got a lot of people there, so it may have pushed the figure up again.
Yes.
In the last year or so. But
Old Alresford Place, opposite the church, was originally built as the rectory. The house was occupied during the Civil War by the rector of New Alresford, Dr. Peter Haylin, a fervent royalist. He was chased out of his parish by the Roundheads after the Battle of Angerton and fled to Oxford to join the king. The rectory was ransacked by his neighbour, the Cromwellian Colonel Norton, but after many adventures Peter eventually returned to his parish. Old Alresford Place is now a diocesan retreat centre, but it's well known as the place where Mary Sumner founded the Mothers' Union in 1875. Down what was the Pilgrim's Way stands Old Alresford House, built by Admiral Lord George Rodney, who lived from 1719 to 1792. Famous for his defeat of the French and Spanish fleets, he had this house built with part of his naval prize money gained during the wars of the Austrian succession. Upton House was built by Lord Rodney's brother, James, with money George thought should have been passed to him. So George is reported to have planted the beeches, which you can still see, to keep Upton House out of his sight. Lord Rodney ranks second only to Admiral Lord Nelson in British naval history. I've come to see May.
Right, come in.
We had no houses up there where it's up at Green Close. That was all allotments, all the way through up there, allotments.
Can I be as bold as to ask how old you are?
Me? I'll be 94 and a week Friday.
Week Friday.
A week Friday, you'll be 94.
24th of May. Yeah. And I was born on Queen Victoria's birthday.
Were you really?
Yeah. My mother wanted to call me Victoria. And I thought when I was a girl after, oh, I'm glad I'm not called Victoria. What a big name. But of course I didn't know they called them Vicky.
No. And so what year were you born?
I called May. 1897 I was born.
1897.
1897. But it was all thatched cottages then.
What was the village green like then?
Oh, it wasn't like it is now. It was all open. Anybody to go out back, you couldn't go over it much because it was
Marshy?
marshes, and you had what was newts.
Oh yes.
Newts was all over it. That we
People
used to just take their dogs, but that's all it was used for.
Didn't you like the newts?
No, I didn't. No, no, I didn't like the newts.
Was there a Watercress farm where there is one now?
It was only a narrow stream here, and two men worked. That was one was my brother-in-law, well, my husband's brother-in-law, and they worked there year in and year out until Bedden, that's farmer now. Well, he's not farmer, he only has the Watercress now, and he's built it up like it is now.
Did you ever pick and cut watercress?
Oh, did we? You've got a big bunch like that for threepence.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go down the farm, down the...
The water that feeds these beds is pumped from way below ground and maintains a constant temperature of about 40–45 degrees, which allows the watercress to grow throughout most of the year. And it's from here that the water is pumped up from below ground and finds its way eventually through all the beds we see down beyond it.
Well, now, it's like when we have to top the beds, one day it used to be done with a scythe. Now we just got a sort of lawnmower on wheels and just run over it and top it all off. Top the old heads off and wait for the new crop to come through.
The hardest part for this industry is the fact that there's not a recognised manufacturer of machines. You see, all the machines that have been developed by growers themselves.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah.
Because it's such a small industry.
We have any old machine, it's sort
It's a large industry, they come up
customise
with
it.
something for...
Regrows, you see, from the stalk that's left. There's the root for it, and there's the young plant growing.
So everything below that would rot away, and this was...
Yeah, once that's established, then
that rot
the rest
away.
of that chunk there will then just
that,
rot off.
Yeah.
There we go, you can plant that.
That
will
will
regrow.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
Will
So you just
regrow.
drop a piece in and it would grow away. Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
This stuff grows wild once it gets going.
For the day's order, is it?
Yeah.
Tomorrow. Bunches, are you going to get out of these boxes?
Out of each crate we get about 17 at the moment.
more use are going to be doing it for?
I don't know.
I think you keep staying on, this is it, had enough of it. Now we've got some photographs of Alresford here, and I just wonder if you can remember,
if I can
just
see.
look at some of these,
Yes,
and I wonder if you can remember when Alresford was like that. There's a picture of Broad Street.
Oh, yes.
Now can you remember when there was no cars?
Yes, I can.
And horses
yes,
and carts?
Yes, and just down the bottom here was a milk shop.
Yes.
Down there, a grocer's shop, I mean. Eddles, that was their names. Eddles, a grocer's shop. Then up further went, it was a linen draper's. And then up further was Dr. Jolly, and a very old-fashioned doctor. And on further from there went another bigger Burns. And then on further then, near the top, was a butcher's.
Yes.
Livingstone.
Yes.
And then the chemist.
And here's a lovely picture of the fair, the old fair.
Oh,
one.
that's right.
Can you remember when there were fairs like that?
Yes, I can. Yes. We used to take the children in the prams. Yes. Yes, I can remember all that. The roundabouts and the swinging boats and how where the motorbikes went round the wall of death.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yes.
Mill Hill leads to the town mill and the weir mill beyond. And many of these old houses survived the Great Fires, probably because they were upwind during the catastrophes. Old Timbers was originally jetted and then altered, possibly in the 18th century, to its present facade, and the internal beams and fireplace were exposed when the cottage adjacent to Old Timbers was demolished. Well, at last I've caught up with John again, at the Memorial Gardens, where he explained that there was once a swimming pool here, but sadly it has now been filled in.
And it's supplied by fresh water directly from the Arle, which flowed into the pool and out again without any restriction. Constant supply of fresh water going in and out.
Yes, yes.
When
Some of the unwanted
that's right,
greases and things, presumably.
because you know what a sheep's skin wool gets like after a couple of weeks in the field, and there'll be all sorts of things to get out of it.
Well, this is a fine old building to look at now, John, isn't it?
Well, perhaps I can show you the notice on the wall.
Yeah.
That would give you the Yes, as you can see, the mill was built in the 13th century, which would have been about the same time that Godfrey de Lucy, the Bishop of Winchester, built the Great Weir to stop up the stream over there.
Oh, I see, yeah.
The Great Weir it was called, or Great Weir. And which gave rise to the rumour, or the story, that the weir was built to provide a head of water for the mills, you see.
Yes.
And then another
constant supply.
Yes.
Yes.
Supply water for the mills for the constant amount you needed in dry periods, especially the constant amount you needed to keep on washing this wool, which of course was a major industry.
The bit of this river looks very firm actually, John. It's not a sort of silted up or anything. With a fast flow, it's got a nice firm bottom.
Well, it's the original link between Old Alresford and New Alresford. It is still a public highway. The local parish councils got together, I think it was about 30 years ago, and got the rights re-established.
Got a companion.
Yes. Yes, sir.
And how friendly are these swans?
Well, I don't really know, because I'm not very familiar with swans, and I'm not sure how friendly you can be with them.
Well, you're a friendly soul, aren't you?
Well, I've never seen a swan wag its tail
You're
before.
a friendly soul. Once the Great Weir was built, there was no way they could navigate from below the weir to above it anyway, without some lock system, so that does rather...
That's right. The Bishop's Palace was in Bishop Sutton, 2 miles beyond the weir anyway.
Yes.
It is known that he used to travel to Old Alresford, to Alresford rather, occasionally by boat, and landed in a spot behind where the Globe now stands, to visit the market in Broad Street and so on.
Johnny.
At last. Now is this the ford over the River Isle?
Well, it's certainly a ford over the River Isle. Well, my opinion is that the original ford, which is now which now has a little bridge over it in Old Alresford, over Old Alresford Brook, was the original one that gave the name to Alresford.
Yes. So,
but this is and was always certainly a ford.
A ford, yeah.
In the true sense of the word.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a ford over the River Isle, Alresford.
That's right. Old English, the ford over the river where the older trees grow.